Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. I feel like I'm getting really good at that intro now.
Very consistent. 330.
Yeah, when you're good at 330, you know you've got a pattern that's working here.
Well, and if we're supposed to do those 10,000 hours, I think what do we have? Another 9,000 to go.
Oh, we got a lot of hours to go. Yeah, I agree with that one.
A lot of hours.
Well, let's talk about our main topic today. We've been talking about this kind of just a little bit here. Actually, a lot of it, maybe more recently, is kind of another mailbag topic is coming in today. I'll let Seth read it here in just a moment. But the topic will kind of primarily be around deployment pipelines and the readiness of the Fabric platform. So that's going to be our main topic for today. If you're interested in learning about deployment pipelines and or discussing where to use them and what they're good for, this will be the discussion for you. With that, let's jump into the news. I feel like I really do want to build a little segment here that's, some audio clips around the news. There you go, just like that. Nailed it. Who needs to build an audio clip? I have Seth. He is my audio clip.
You need like the old school typewriter, don't you?
Oh yeah. The news. Yeah. Something written in Cobalt or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, some old school language. Things that no one would know about.
Right.
Like the save icon in all of our applications.
You mean a keyboard? No, I mean
a typewriter.
I think I have a music clip on my floppy disk, so let me pull that out.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever given your kids a typewriter or shown them a typewriter? Do they know what it is?
Have you own one?
You don't own one?
No. Why would I own one?
We went to a museum one time, and in the museum, somewhere in the museum, someone had just landed a typewriter, and they're like, "Oh, what's this?" I'm like, "This is a typewriter." They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "This is how you would write letters." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I had to explain. There's this little ribbon, and it gets dirty, and it's ink on it. These little arms come out and press all the letters. They're like, "This is cool." I'm like, "Well, apparently, when our parents went to school, my parents, your grandparents, they would take these. They'd had electric typewriters, and they would take these big bricks of a machine into school, college, or whatever, and that was what they would type on." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a little bit different now with a laptop." They're like, "Wow, that's really different." Anyways, sorry, I digress.
You do digress.
Typewriters.
You want to start talking about cassette tapes too?
Yes. 8-tracks. Let's go with 8-tracks, baby.
All the way back.
I don't think I ever seen.
I had
ever seen an 8-track.
I wasn't an 8-track guy. Cassette tapes.
I was a Walkman guy.
Walkman.
Yep.
That was more like a brand. It wasn't really necessarily like a tape.
Because you had Sharpie.
Because you had a CD. Because you have a CD player that was a Walkman. CD players are almost a rarity now too.
Why would you have one? None of my computers I have a CD place. I would have to buy it on Amazon a USB port for a CD slot.
My desktop came with one, and I don't ever use it. I could use it as a coffee holder, and it would be better that way. I don't ever touch it.
By the way, when I had to reset my computer, it said, "Please insert your CD-ROM, your Windows CD-ROM." Like, that may be a problem.
We're gonna have an issue here. That's hilarious. Couple items. Tommy, you picked up some news here from Tabular Editor on their blog. I'll put that on the chat window here as well. What's going on over Tabular Editor?
So we got the July release of Tabular Editor, and some would say a few more updates in Power BI this month.
Ooh, zinger.
Ooh, zinger. So I think the best one, if you use Tabular Editor 3, you probably use the pivot grid. It's basically a user interface to create a DAX query. In so many words, I can add my fields and I can add my metrics, kind of get the numbers and use the DAX debugger. Well, two major improvements here. I can now save a pivot grid, which I actually really like that feature right off the bat. But I think the more important one is a overhaul to the pivot grid. It looks a lot more like Excel's pivot table.
Pivot tables. It's what it should look like.
It was a little clunky.
I didn't understand how to work it. I got the gist of it. And this is one thing I'll point out to people. I think it's really important for people to understand. Pivot grids are very useful in Tabular Editor. And I think this is only in Tabular Editor 3. This is not in Tabular Editor 2. So just FYI, this is the paid version of Tabular Editor. But they're awesome because you can build measures and then render a table for yourself to figure out, did your measures actually compute the right numbers? That's like 90% of what I do in desktop when I'm building data models. Yeah. I'm like building measures, and then I'm immediately building tables of those measures to make sure that they're working correctly. Does this make sense? Is it working as I expected? And I'm just grabbing different dimensions. That's what this does.
100%. And so, yeah, I think the user interface looks great. And then the final update is you can export your DAX query to CSV or an Excel, which
Ooh,
it was part of DAX Studio back in the day, or still part of DAX Studio. But all these features are great,
wow.
are great to me because I constantly find myself with those types of tooling where I either need to showcase the results somewhere else, and I'm usually doing a lot of copy paste. So I love the ability to export, but I am very, very excited to try the new user interface out.
That's a great idea. I'm gonna actually go make sure I go update right away with that one. So with that, I will also put in the Tabular Editor 3 link if you want to go download it. It is a free software to download. You do get there is a license that you need to pay for it, so you get a 30-day free trial with Tabular Editor, and then if you want to keep it, I think there's like different price points for if it's just you using it, if it's your enterprise using it, and as you go more towards the enterprise, you get licenses you can share across different people. So,
and I'm finding too a lot of organizations. I actually do a training on Tableau Editor. I think my next one is in August. It's 3 hours, but I find a lot of organizations like, yeah, we'll purchase that for people who are taking these courses.
yes.
So if you find yourself like, look, I do Power BI once a week, you should be able to get this licensing
Yes.
by your organization.
Yes.
I know my organization offers it. So,
okay, that's funny.
yeah. It's a joke.
Awesome. I know it's a joke because you're one. You're one person.
Yes.
Like, you're just one person. I'm like,
You
oh,
may
yeah,
not get
I get
paid
it.
very well,
I
but
didn't
you'll
get the
get
joke.
Tableau
I'm
Editor.
sorry. I
Yeah,
need more
so-
coffee. Awesome. And then the second note here is another Fabric blog item just came out, Tommy. Let's there's some new information coming to us inside the Power BI.com service.
You're right. We are doing really well with these segues. So now in Fabric, in Microsoft Fabric, in the user interface, if I'm looking for help, usually there'd be help documentation. I can search. There's a help pane on the right-hand side that shows up. It no longer brings me out of the experience. But now what they've incorporated is the ability to look at solved community posts. So we are all huge components. If anyone more than anyone here, Seth Bauer, our MVP of MVPs on the community forum.
Yep, exactly right.
On solved posts.
Used to be.
So, hey, you know what? A legacy never dies. So,
right.
But now you can actually find not only official documentation by Microsoft, but it will also filter, or you have the ability to filter solved community posts on a relevant topic.
So, I want to test this one out. So, I like it because you know that's why communities exist, right? To share information, and if it's one less click away, or think about even as we've talked throughout the years, like so many people didn't know the community was there, right?
Yes.
And there's just a wealth of knowledge that is going on that is being shared. So throwing this into the application, I think, gets more visibility onto that, which is great. The one question I have, which I'll have to test out, is granted, it's only the solved stuff, but is it more curated than that, or is it the entirety of the community?
Right now, I believe it's only solved community posts
from all time.
If any solution,
you know
is
what I'm saying?
question,
Because if you're, and here comes a nuance, right? So you have a product that has rapidly evolved over 7 years and is now in an ecosystem called Fabric. Like, are we bringing things from 2000 into here where somebody's
I'm doing searches. I'm finding things from 2020 to 2022. Like I'm seeing some old stuff here.
So that I think may be problematic because that would potentially confuse people even further, right? Like my data flow or my data set is not refreshing, and then something pulls up from
super old.
It's like, wait,
I type in data flows.
What interface is that picture from? Like, I don't even understand. It's not even the same application. So that's the only like criticism I would have around that, because like if you go to a community, it's curated for that long of time, whereas a help and search in a tool should be very relevant to like the tool alone. So we'll see.
I'll make the argument that it will be worth those hiccups, because a lot of tooling I've used Confluence and Jira, and they have the same integration with a forum. And I find a lot of my questions I was trying to answer were not available in the normal help documentation. Yeah, there's a few like that doesn't exist anymore as you look at the answer.
Yeah.
But I think the relevancy there because it's a lot more custom towards probably the question I'm trying to answer.
I get it.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, whatever you're searching for in the search window, I mean, search engines do this all the time. This is nothing new from a age of answer question, right? I would imagine there's going to be like, let me say it this way. This is potentially the precursor to Copilot living in that help window, right? So first step would be index all of your Microsoft documentation. Second step would be index everything on the community forum that is solved. Once you have those two things done, the next thing I would logically see would be like slap a Copilot on top of it and then just conversationally talk about your questions. And it says, here's all the, like, so to me, this is like Copilot getting ready to show up in the help window is how I see this. That's where I would see this going, honestly.
I would agree with you. I would say that would be a good place for Copilot.
I would say that would be a great place, right? But this is the thing I've discussed this with Alex Powers before in the past. It feels like every time we want to throw Copilot at something, it's just a fancy search engine. It's like, let's throw Copilot at something. Like, I can't find it, so throw Copilot at it. Well, we already have search engines that are good at indexing things. Is that really the right solution for this?
But think about it in terms of like even what's happening on the browser windows now, right? When you search for something, you get a very clear response that is sourcing from like
the page you're on,
top article or top articles, right? Or the first two or something like that.
Yeah.
So, there is value there, right? You're curating, like, I have this question, I'm curating a response, and here's the links if you want to go click on them, right? Or it's taking so it's summarizing, I think, and that's where Copilot or something could very well, enhance that experience a bit.
Yeah.
Mike, I feel like every frustrated AI engineer at Microsoft's like, yeah, Mike, we'll just slap a Copilot on it. It's just that easy.
No problem.
No problem. Let's just slap another one, huh? Thanks, Mike.
I don't know what they do over there for Copilot. I don't know.
It's just, what are you talking about, Tommy? It's one thing.
Yeah, it's just another GPU. NVIDIA is going crazy right now, so let's just make NVIDIA make more money. So I do see here, Donald says, I want a Kimball Copilot. I'm like, yeah, I do.
Ooh,
like,
there you go.
Slap a Copilot on your model view. That's what I want. Hey, this table has a bidirectional relationship. We don't recommend that.
Can you make that t-shirt? Got a problem? Slap a Copilot.
Slap a Copilot.
I can't actually. Maybe that doesn't sound.
No, that's probably not appropriate. I don't think we're going to aggressively attack a Copilot. I don't think she'll like that or he'll like that. I don't know what it is, but I will say this though. I didn't wear my shirt. Had I known, I would have worn my Copilot told me to say it shirt. So I think that's actually very relevant because I think in the future here, humans won't even talk to each other. We'll just talk to the Copilot, which will then talk to another Copilot, would then be read by another human. So
best podcast episode ever.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
By the way, fun little keyboard shortcut on Edge. Control-Shift-, brings up Copilot.
Really?
I know you're trying that right now.
I'm trying it right now on my I'm not going to do it because Tommy's going to make my computer shut down with this shortcut. This is something else that he's trying to trick me with.
Cause errors.
Tommy's trying to trick me.
Funny.
It's the instant blue screen button. Windows Shift period. Awesome. Any other news or announcements, things that were announced recently? I feel like there was something else that I was just talking with people about that was relevant, and I can't remember. Let me just check the blog here on the Fabric. Oh, I know. It reminds me. Alex Powers has just announced a new updated release roadmap, Power BI report file. So I just saw it, I think, show up on Twitter recently. So I will summon the powers of Alex Powers, and I will try to snag a copy of the report, and we'll try to get it up on the community site. So jam.powerbi.tips, and we'll update our roadmap because we have a Power BI report that Alex made previously that we just publicly share. It's just available for anyone who wants to use it, but we'll try and put his report up there for you so you can go have a single URL, easy to go look at for all of the knowledge, information, news around Power BI. Actually, this is a good plug. Tommy, I'm still adding a lot of articles to our jam.community.power BI tips website.
So I need to feed a bunch in there. We'll talk about it after, but the search feature.
There's going to be a lot of articles coming here pretty soon.
It's about to be about 1,200. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, for those who don't know or who are not aware, we have jam.powerbi.tips. It's a website that we run. And one of the tabs on there is called bookmarks. And so these bookmarks are, if I find an article that's interesting, if I find something that's important, I tag it and it creates a groomed list of every single news, article, blog, anything we can find or put our hands around that are related to Power BI. Tommy and I have been, Tommy will be, we categorize every topic or article that comes through. It's like, here's the things that are listed with DAX, Power Query, the Power BI service, visualizations, administration, our Fabric things, developer. So there is so much content from people being created. I have a hard time finding a single news place to go find everything. So this has been my go-to, is where I store information, and Tommy will be storing, and Seth, you're also in there too, but we're all trying to collect things that we think are important. And last episode, we had episode 329 for the podcast. And actually, I put the article on there. I highlighted a couple lines in the article that were important. So this potentially could be your new news feed if you wanted to check any of the hot news coming out. And we're going to try and catch all the relevant articles that are out there. So let me, I'll throw that in the window here as well, just in case you want to go get it.
While you do that, I'll talk about the major update coming with that. So I also own Raindrop. Since you're the owner, I can't search it, but they've just made a major update where they're adding AI to Raindrop, because AI and everything.
Because Copilot on everything.
Because Copilot on everything.
Because Copilot.
So they're working on their tags or their topics where this automatically tag for you. So I'm going to go through all my articles I've saved, add that to yours. And basically what we're going to get is the searchability on this feature is probably the reason why you need to bookmark this yourself. If not just for the curation of what we have probably now, well over 10,000 articles, I would assume at this point. Or I know at least
9,041 is what we're at. We're at 9,041 tagged and categorized.
Very soon to be over 10,000.
There's going to be over 10,000 here shortly. Yep.
And that's obviously not something you're going to read chronologically. However, the search feature will also search the content of the article, not just the title. So if you're looking for anything,
that's amazing.
If you're looking at anything for calculation groups, not only do we have topics that are hashtags, but you can also search the relevant content of that article as well.
It's so cool. It's literally like a search. It's like a search tool just for Power BI. It's just, again, I don't really go. I mean, again, as I find articles, I see people post things on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. I'll immediately tag them, and my first thing to do is drop a tag, save it. That way I can have it for later. And this will be great when it's starting to search the entire article, because then I'll be able to just randomly search everything. So anyways, it's a great tool. There is a search item already on jam.powerbi.tips. So you can go there right now. You can use the search icon. You can look for keywords. Now, only if we could get that search element to be inside the powerbi.com portal, that would be good. That was my one thought. We talked about the portal getting additional search from Microsoft Docs and
from Jam.
Yeah, it would be nice if I could also add internal documentation there as well, or internal links that would also be referenced, because one of the one I would definitely add would be dax.guide. I think they should let me as an administrator add an additional search area, and they should go out and index that page and go find all the relevant things on that page. And that way I could be like, hey, go to dax.guide, and that's the SQL BI version of DAX documentation. It is by far the most robust, the most complete, the most clear as what's going on inside DAX. I will actually use that over the actual Microsoft documentation for DAX, because the examples I think are just much cleaner and more understandable in that tool.
I think that's closer to being your secret Santa than it is being a feature in Microsoft.
That's maybe true. No. I have to wait a long time until that one occurs. We got some
worth at least $20.
So worth at least $20. All right, so I'll throw that in there. For anyone else who's interested, dax.guide. If you don't know about dax.guide, you do need to learn about that one. It is by far the most helpful tool for learning about and writing DAX. It's from the team of SQL BI team. So awesome. with that, I think we've rambled enough on our intros. Any other intros, or we want to just go into the article, or actually the news?
Oh, I'll have a rant, just not today.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I've got some fun experiences with other tools I've had to get engaged with.
We'll save it for Tuesday.
All right,
Set on the agenda right now.
Let's save it for Tuesday. I like it. All right, Seth, you want to do us the favor here and give us the Seth Reader voice, and let's read this mailbag.
This mailbag comes from, we have no idea. What's the purpose of deployment pipelines and Git integration when Dataflows, in parentheses, Direct Lake, semantic models, and reports are not supported? I'm struggling to get my head around it and to convince management that Fabric should be the data platform of choice. I'm reverting back to good old golden data sets to have some profit of a dev test prod pipeline.
All right. Well, some of this I feel is correct. Some of it I feel is not correct. There's some correction here. Maybe I'm misinterpreting the question.
Had it is kind of the tone here.
Yeah.
I'm done. Washing my hands of this
trash that is
silliness.
Pipelines.
All right. So what are we frustrated at here, fellows? What are we talking about? What feature?
I don't know. We're talking about two features, I think.
Yes. So
deployment pipelines.
Correct.
And
Git integration. Yeah. So they're kind of
specifically deployment pipelines with the direct lake semantic models.
Okay, so that's one thing I want to quantify there because
there's specifics in here.
Yeah, because models and reports are supported in deployment pipelines.
Right.
And they're supported in just a pro and premium per user experience and in the Fabric experience. So you can move those through. Lake houses are also supported. Notebooks and pipelines are also supported. It's when you get into the details of what am I trying to do in dev test prod where I think things start falling apart a little bit for me. I think we're going to get there, but again, it feels like a lot of this still feels like it's in preview.
Well, a big part, and I think the frustration here is, sounds like the user here, again, we're going to just say the user, are a avid fan of the podcast, is utilizing Git integration using Azure DevOps and deployment pipelines. And it's unable to do so because it's not supported yet with a direct lake semantic model. Other semantic models are supported, but utilizing a direct lake semantic model is not supported in these features. And that's really the crux of this, because we're getting pushed, and I don't want to say we're getting pushed, but the suggestion from Microsoft documentation, the best practice, it sounds like if you're using a lake house, you want to use a direct lake semantic model rather than import, rather than direct query. However, if I'm trying to do the developer experience or the all-in developer experience, I'm unable to. It's not supported. I can't use deployment pipelines and I cannot use Git to do so, or use both at the same time. And this is interesting because I'm going through this both taking a quick step back. I'm thinking of deployment pipelines and I'm thinking of Git, and I'm like, from a larger point, do I need both? Because they're both developer experiences, right? Deployment pipelines and Git. One's more developer focused, but at the end of the day, they're both from a developer point of view. And do I need both? And I'll kind of pause there with these features. If I'm using Git, is deployment pipelines then essential?
So if you look at the Docker, so let's talk about a couple of things here. So let's talk about what Git is supposed to do, and then where is it kind of explained from Microsoft how it's supposed to run. And I think this in here is where the story is not quite refined yet. We need some more help from Microsoft to kind of finish out the feature in my mind. So I believe, when you look at the Microsoft documentation, everything that you're saying needs to be checked into Git is you have a workspace that's attached to the Git repo. The Git repo attaches itself directly to your dev environment. So in Microsoft documentation, thanks, Seth. You have a little article. I'll put this out here as well. The best practices in CI/CD, and this is kind of what I'm referring to, because there's a little image, I think, in this one. Is this one that has the image? Yeah. Does not. There's another one that's, I'll put this article out there to set. There's another one out there that has an image of like how Microsoft expects you to use Git. Microsoft does not expect you to use Git on test and prod. So the idea is the development environment. And realistically, if you think about the people that are doing deployments in your deployment pipeline pieces, you're going to have a dev team. Your dev team should only be focusing on the dev environments. Your dev workspace for reports, your dev workspace for semantic models. That's all. That's the only, you only really need one Git integration for that environment. Once you have published changes into that Git repo and you're done, that's hanging off of the main branch of your Git. And then what Microsoft explains is, okay, now that you have the artifacts inside your development environment, now move it using deployment pipelines downstream to your other environments, up to 10, because you can have as many as you want now. So if you look at their pattern, it makes sense. If you look at their pattern as it relates to semantic models and reports, it also makes sense, because your semantic models can have different connection strings. They're detecting the connection string in the semantic model and allowing you to adjust it per environment. So this may get like a really technical here for a second, but just bear with me. The main key point here is you have core code that's going to define the semantic model. You're going to have core connection strings that will change per different environment. So in any tool that you're building, anytime you have a connection to a source of data, those connections are technically variables that are going to be adjusted as you move through the system. So a lakehouse, you need to have a lakehouse in dev, test, and prod that stores where your data is going to go. The infrastructure is the lakehouse, but the GUID or the information of the lakehouse needs to be adjusted as you move through the different environments. So every tool that you're going to use, data activator, deployment pipelines, Dataflows, everything you use, all of them have to be configured in a way that allows you to adjust the connection string in every single environment, because those are all going to be changing. Because when I move my direct lake semantic model, I need to just change the semantic model pointing not to dev anymore. I need to point to test. Right. So to me, yeah, everyone's saying variables it's all about variables. Variables are the thing that are supposed to make this work for you as you build your solutions. What's not really supported very well today is you can't really do this very well with Fabric at this point. And there's this missing aspect of the connection strings are not parameters or variabilized in a way that allows me to move it between the environments. So to your first point, Tommy, how does this going to work, right? Well, per Microsoft's documentation, they've got a very, I think, simple method. I think what people really want is they want the Git integration to be the source of truth.
Yes.
They want the Git integration to be, okay, the Git repo will connect to prod, to test, and to dev, and you deploy directly through Git using actions. Hey, I'm done with my code. I'm ready to deploy said code into a certain environment. And this is actually more of a pattern of how actual software development or website or whatever else app development works, is you're going to have many different branches off of not many. You'll have main branches and other branches as well. And you'll either tag things as a development build, or you'll make different branching names, and those will all attach to different environments. So that's typically how people are building these things. So I don't think the Git branching world 100% aligns with what we have today in Fabric.
So, I mean, I can make the argument we had deployment pipelines because we didn't have Git back in the day. Like, deployment pipelines were created because there was no Git.
It's the business user. I mean, we weren't bringing a bunch of developers into PowerBI.com.
Yeah, and that's also part of what that article points out, right? Like those two solutions are kind of separate within the ecosystem.
Yes.
Right. If you try to use them both at the same time, you're going to run into problems pretty quick. And Mark Lelefeld wrote a pretty good blog about like what are the scenarios in which you're trying to use those integrated together. But I think it is like those two things are separate for different audiences to try to like segment out and make sure that you have a test environment, you have a prod environment. What's interesting, like 2 points are interesting around this. If you think about when we actually got deployment pipelines, or now the ability to integrate Git, like these are way late in the game. Right? Like the heavy developer focused tooling for the hardcore geeks of Power BI. But now ever increasing larger implementations of Power BI, right, are just getting there. I would almost say to the listener, like kind of reset your expectations a bit, because what you're taking is stuff that's coming late to the game, and then the brand new features, and saying that they're not supported, like direct lake, right? Semantic model. Like, yeah, it's always going to come later, for one, in all the tooling, right? You're not going to have parity or full support for stuff right out of the gate.
Yeah, I got to push back on this though.
Go ahead.
And because if you're going to push these two features, you're going to push direct lake semantic models, and
Who's
you're going
pushing?
to Microsoft.
Where? They're
in all their
documentation
documentation
they're
for the
supporting
lake house.
it. Sure. Because now all of a sudden it's very, very relevant, right?
Yeah.
All of this is, and don't get me wrong, like in the functional bits, like you go into the documentation of all this, it's like there's a lot of limitations still that I agree have to be removed in order for you to fully leverage the capability of that tool.
Yeah,
for sure.
And we completely agree there. I mean, they've been pushing it since they announced it last year, when they said we are moving towards the direct lake mode of data integration in Power BI semantic models. That was from Build 2023, when we all fell out of our chairs. And if you're going to try to support we'll call it the gold standard, or what the golden calf, so to speak, what we're all trying to no, not that.
Not that.
Or,
no, that's not wrong analogy.
The trophy kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll say the first place.
The prize.
That's what I meant. Thank you. The prize that Microsoft's aiming towards, and you're pushing the Git integration, and you don't support that major feature, the prize that they're going towards, the preferred method of integration in a semantic model, we'll say. That's probably the best way to say it. And we don't support that.
But Mike, okay. Didn't Mike just outline for 15 minutes like the key parts of Git that still aren't there, that we can't fully integrate yet?
No, so we can integrate, but it doesn't support directly semantic models.
No,
it supports normal semantic models.
Understood.
Okay.
But aren't there still problems with variables or switching between environments and things? Yeah, that's fundamental to making this work. Right. So I get it. Right. But you can't think you've lasted this long developing Power BI.
No, that's solutions. Not true. I downloaded Visual Studio in 2017.
Right. But just because all of the other changes, right, that have happened that Microsoft has pushed as features doesn't mean that they're all integrated into Git, because they're not, or all integrated into deployment pipelines, because they're not. So to all of a sudden be like, hey, we have direct lake and semantic models, and then assume that it's automatically going to get added and supported into these features, no, it's not, because this is coming way late.
I know, and that's a fair argument. I think, and I don't want to be pounding the same conversation we've been having over and over, because we've had a few mailbags. This is not our first mailbag about, or question from our avid 5 listeners about, hey, there's a lot I want to do in Fabric.
4 now, because we don't agree with this.
So hey, you know what? I'll take 4. But we've had a lot of other mailbags too, ones we haven't even talked about on the podcast yet, that have dealt with, I really want to dive into Fabric, but there's preview features I'm unaware of, and there's features that we don't want to make the move yet because it's not all there. And I don't want to talk about the same argument. I don't want to keep hammering that. But
no, but it's the same answer.
Yeah.
As the last time, which is deployment pipelines and or Git integration, but deployment pipelines more for business users or people using the interface, is production ready for use cases where it's production ready, right? Like if you are going to leverage a feature that is offered within the Fabric ecosystem that is not supported in deployment pipelines, and it doesn't work for you, then don't push them. Don't use them. You can't use them, right? Like something it's the same thing as Fabric ready yet that we talked about. It depends on what your must-haves are for your business. Are you just pushing it because it's technology, or are you pushing the new latest thing, or is it, hey, it's core, and we can't use it yet. We're going to figure out a different way to, solve this problem, which we have for as long as we've been playing with Power BI.
So would we encourage, or I guess with the user who says, I'm reverting back to golden data sets or golden semantic models, or maybe he's going back to data sets.
Going back to Azure Analysis Services as a standalone product.
So I guess from our conversation, what I'm hearing from our dialogue here is that we would encourage him to go back to the gold semantic models.
No, because I'd encourage you not to try to push into something that isn't supported. So, like, is there frustration because he needs a feature or wants deployment pipelines or get integration to support direct lake semantic models? Well, of course, yes, that's an idea. Push it. Like, do we agree that it should be in there? Absolutely. If I'm using something for code change or deployment strategies within an organization, and you're going through the efforts of training teams how to use that, yes, I would expect the platform to support all of the different ways I want to deploy something or manage something in the Fabric ecosystem. So because it's there, like not there now, doesn't mean it's not going to be there in the future, right? But it better be there in the future. Otherwise, what's the point, right?
So that's an interesting point, because I remember when I think it was like Dataflows 1.5 or Dataflows Gen 2, if I wanted to create that in an existing workspace, Microsoft would give an error or a notification saying, hey, if you want to create this newer version of a data flow, this workspace can't have any other old data flows. You have to remove them or create a new workspace. So it kind of hindered me from trying something without, in a sense, setting up my environment in the right way. It was frustrating, but what eventually occurred was I wasn't left with a workspace that had some things that worked and some things that didn't. And that notification really hindered me at first, but then ensured that environment was set up properly. Right now, and I think where a lot of the frustration we're getting from our own listeners, and my own personal frustration too with some of the items trying to use Git, is it says, hey, set up Git, you're good to go. And then immediately see unsupported. You don't get that notification. It doesn't say before you actually try a feature, or when they say something's available to use, you don't get that notification without going deep into the documentation on just trying it out and then finding for yourself.
Yeah. And I do want to recognize that there's shared sentiment here, right? When new features come out, and the ability for us to deploy things in a better way that is good for our organization, the way I look at that is, I want to use these tools. They will be awesome and great for the organization. I'm very frustrated that I can't right now because of those two things, right? Like when you identify one of these net new features that comes out or supported areas, there is frustration, because it's like, what the hell? You're putting this out there. I'm trying to like ride this wave with you, and now you're saying like I can't put these two things together. So there is frustration there. Absolutely.
I agree with that one. And I'll kind of keep pointing out here some things here as well. In my perspective on this is, I'm coming from Azure Data Factory. I'm coming from Synapse. Those were two cloud-based tools that started kind of being built from the ground with Git integration already in place. And so to deploy those things, so a couple things here that my mind is coming from is, when we look at like how the platform has evolved and where it came from, right? Those two Azure-based services were deployed through scripts. You could have JSON objects that deployed that pattern of dev, test, prod environments. That was kind of already built into the product from day one. So because of that, it may have been a little bit clunky. Like doing a Synapse dev, test, prod is actually quite complex, because they do exactly what we need to do to override different variables in the pipeline to say, okay, this semantic or this Synapse environment will point to this key vault. This Synapse environment will point to this storage account. And then as you move things through, you provide these things called overrides, where in that environment, it has, this is the environment, but then you're able to override portions of JSON to change the connection strings as you move through different environments, right? Yeah. This came from a world of we have to support Git from day one. Mm-hmm. Where I think this is coming from now in Fabric, we're getting to the place where more enterprises want to use it, and Fabric is trying to be more of this enterprise-grade solution. But it's coming from, and I think actually Kratos BI does a great job explaining this, right? A lot of what's built for Power BI is starting at the pyramid of users of Fabric. The larger user base is individuals and teams. So a lot of the features we're seeing have been built for individuals and teams just using PowerBI.com. What we're seeing now is we're seeing the enrichment or the development of moving more into department and enterprise grade solutioning. And so it's like this idea of like, well, we have all this, in my mind, if I'm a developer, right, I'm looking at this going, wow, there's so much tech debt around Git that isn't there. And what we're seeing is Microsoft slowly chewing through all of this tech debt. This is why we see the new Fabric API showing up. This is why we see items as a new item inside the Fabric API, where you can go read. Like I can edit a report without actually opening the report now. I can call an API, get the item out, observe all the objects, make the changes I need, and put that information back and have the report automatically updated. This is all coming from the PBIR and the PBIP format that Rui's been working on. So we're heading the right direction. It's just in my mind, I see a lot of massive tech debt that's getting erased here or having to be reworked so that we can get all the features that we need. And, it's Fabric, it's new. I think it's a bit harder to figure out which features are in quote unquote preview, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that just don't work yet because it's kind of, not there yet. But I think we're heading in the right direction. And when we were at the Fabric conference in Las Vegas, Amir made a very bold statement on stage. He said, we are going to have Git integration handled for all artifacts and all assets, in 6 months. And that was from whenever he said, so we're getting like April. So yeah. We're getting further down the road here.
For my birthday.
Running out.
So I mean, it's recorded. It's on YouTube. You can hear him say that he really wants to push for that portion. So I think so to me, that just gives me some affirmation that the emphasis is we're going to do Git. We're going to figure out these deployment pipelines. It's going to happen. Right now, I think we just have so many teams trying to grapple with this legacy bit of tech debt and, yeah. We're getting pipelines, but that was from Azure Data Factory, but they don't kind of work the same and they're kind of different. So they're kind of rebuilding the code base. So a lot of learned things are coming forward that are different. So to me, I feel like, yeah, we're going to get there. Is it frustrating right now? Yes, it is. Do I stop developing it in Fabric because I just can't do it? And it just probably not. I'm probably in this is like I felt like we did when we started seeing Power BI to begin with. There's all these like, well, I can't get this visual to do that. Well, here's my workaround to make it have rounded edges on a bar and a bar chart. Like there's things you can do to tweak it so that it works. It's not ideal, but you can get the effect that you want by doing some workarounds. And I think I'm very excited for this because we're at a cusp. We're at the top. I mean, I feel like if we're not at the top of the hill, we're getting close to the top of the hill, where I think we're going to really start seeing some momentum picking up here because of Rui's really hard work around the PBIR and PBIP format. Once some of this starts clicking off, we're going to see John Kursky like writing 10 blogs a day at some point here because he's going to just
MVP like now. So like,
boom,
ramp it up, man. Ramp it up.
He's been cranking out by the way the CI/CD stuff as it is, and so we're just going to see what we're seeing here is I think we're going to see patterns very quickly emerging here around integration, deployment pipelines, CI/CD. What will the patterns look like? And so we're not there yet. We're probably I'm probably a bit too early to the story because I can see the vision of where I want this to go. I've done this before in other solutions, so I understand this idea of like overrides and how to do things. I'll fall back to my main point here. In software development, we probably worry most about infrastructure and the code that runs on that infrastructure. in software development, you probably focus a little bit around what is the data in those different environments, but sometimes the data is what it is. And you don't really do a whole lot of like cleaning or checking with the data pieces. Inside a business intelligence realm, though, we have three distinct things we care about. We care about the infrastructure that the things run on. How many semantic models do I have? How do I deploy them? Then we care about the code inside the semantic models or the lakehouses or whatever. And we care about the data inside each of those environments. So one thing that has not been very clearly articulated to me is, let's imagine you have dev test prod in a pipeline. I may need to have a process that goes into, I'm deploying some changes to engineering code. It requires me to delete and replace my data. There's no actions in a deployment pipeline that says refresh and reload all data after the artifacts have been deployed. That is typically a thing that would show up in Azure DevOps. You would actually build in tests and post-production activities that would then do this cleaning or scrubbing, or hey, I need to delete the last 3 months of data and then reload it because I'm doing something new. Whatever the thing is, these are processes that need to exist inside this pipeline. So if we're building deployment pipelines, we need to be very cognizant of the infrastructure, the code that runs on the infrastructure, and we need to be cognizant of the data that's in the infrastructure. And so we need something to kind of help us manage all three of those things.
Yeah.
I don't think Microsoft gets the data side of things. I don't think they understand it. I feel like the conversations I've had, everyone asks a lot more questions of like, why do you need this? I'm like, can't you just see it? I need a process to let me like clean out and refresh data if needed when I'm doing deployments.
I would, on the positive side, right? And you're talking about how Power BI devs, right, pushing for, the CI/CD, right, is kind of the last group of the pyramid, right? So it's been a little slower. But with Fabric, realistically, the clash is coming from the opposite direction now, which is probably why it's getting a lot more love and will be, and or Amir even like voicing that he's pushing for it.
Yeah,
is because this is back-end tooling, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
These are services that have fully baked solutions, and folks will not move into Fabric unless they get the same experience related to that.
That's a good point.
And I think that's where you do see the acceleration of why it's going to get implemented in Fabric faster.
Well, and I think it's important to note, you mentioned this, Seth, and I think it's really important to note this podcast and the people who are listening are all more on the nerdier side, we'll say, or are testing.
Speak for yourself. I'm super cool. Yes. I'm not nerdy at all.
So go rewind about 45 seconds about architecture.
I went.
I don't think
there's been a nerdier thing the last 20 episodes.
That's hilarious. Dialed, Tommy. Dialed. The comment is exactly on. And when I went to build, I had other people who were like from the Power BI team, like Patrick and Adam, Alex Powers, Patrick from Cube. They kept saying, I was telling them about things I was learning. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. It's so cool. And they're like, Michael, you are 100% a developer. Like you are thinking like a developer. Like we're not that. We're Power BI. We're not developers. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. Right.
Again, another nerdy
reference. That was the from Minecraft villagers that you may hear if your kids are playing Minecraft a lot.
I think we're having all the evidence we need, but
man, I've been found out. I was trying to hide. I was a secret nerd, and now I'm not.
The man who has a QR code on his T-shirt.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right, Tommy. All right, pull it back here.
Well, but most people who are the normal business users not going, wait, Git's part of Power BI? I can't wait to learn that. They're probably moving towards the deployment pipelines, if that, and that's probably somewhat intimidating for them. But I think so. That's a really good point, though. I think to mention that the majority of people are not looking at Git and deployment pipelines as the be all end all. However, I'm going to say a statement, and I want to see if you agree or how much you agree with the statement. For the more the developer side of things, the more on our end, the power users or the power users, because not all features are supported in Git and deployment pipelines. the majority of what we're doing in Fabric should be on the testing and experiment side, not production. Would you agree, slightly disagree, or not agree at all?
Middle agree, I guess. I mean, I think there are certain things in Fabric that are very much production ready, right? I think pipelines, super solid, getting much better to use. There's features that are getting added there, like it. Notebooks, pretty solid. I'd give it a good 80% of the way there. Seems like it runs well. They've done major improvements for like usability and being able to run things. So I think that's really a solid part of that. All the semantic models that you normally have used, Power BI reports, semantic models, all that stuff's very solid. So a lot of things there are very good. Where I struggle right now, I really struggle right now with Dataflows. Dataflows Gen 2 is just not cutting it for me. It doesn't, there's some very, I think, simple features that need to be there that are just not being captured. I need a pipeline to send a parameter into a data flow, period. I need a Dataflow Gen 2 to be supported in a pipeline, period. Like these are to me, these should have been done day one with Dataflows. And to your point, Tommy, right? Or my point earlier, other tools were coming from this Git world, this pipeline deployment world. That should have been the starting point of like, okay, we have Dataflows Gen 1. Let's start. And the first feature should have been, we're going more towards the Git and deployments. And this is what's going to happen. Fix that feature first. Start with that at the core. Like take that part of Azure Data Factory. That should have been the very top feature on your backlog. Get that first, then work on parameters, and then do all the other enhancements that you're talking about. Fast copy, all these other things that are in there. To me, those two priorities are like number one and number two. And once you get that done correctly, everything else just falls into place and it becomes much easier to use them. So I think those to me are like maybe they're much harder than I perceive them to be. I could totally just be wrong on this, but I feel like you already had this working in Data Factory. Like, why didn't you just take that bit of code over? Like, it was working, and now it doesn't work. So to me, that's like things. I mean, that was, again, that's not Dataflows, but that's Data Factory. But anyways, you get my kind of point. Like there feels like there's some core pieces that should have been there. So to answer your question directly, Tommy, do I use in production? Yes, I do. I use portions of Fabric inside production. Do I steer away from certain things? Yes, I do. Right. So things I steer away from Dataflows for now. It's in Gen 2 at least. I'll take Dataflows Gen 1 because that still works just fine. You can move them through a pipeline. You can still make tables across the environments there. I'll take pipelines, I'll take notebooks, I'll take semantic models, all those things, apps. There's a lot of things that still just work like normal that there's been some enhancements to. Do I use deployment pipelines? Yeah, I probably do. I like them from a ease of migration and movement. Are they perfect for what I need as a developer? No, they're not. But are they perfect for me as a business user? Yeah, probably. They probably meet a lot of the needs. So that's my perspective on it. Seth, what do you think?
Like if I'm all in on Fabric?
Well, I mean, are there portions of Fabric that you're like, let's productionalize it, and ones that you're like, I'd hold off on it?
Well, I mean, all of us are in production Fabric.
True.
Very smart, Seth. Very good.
Right. So yeah, we're just talking about aspects.
We'll talk about the Git integration. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, from my perspective, like, is it useful? Do you get more out of the new features of Fabric, like the ecosystem for net new things? Yeah. Right. Could they be production ready? Well, yeah, if they work, yeah. Right. Like it's not everything is, super convoluted or complex or whatever. Like, so if you're leveraging the platform and it works for you, awesome. Am I personally? No, not yet. Not to any like heavy degree, because it's going to take shifting a team to support internal things in a completely different infrastructure. And I have a very large infrastructure on other tooling, right? Other services that I'm not even close to doing a comparison or like a net migration yet or around things, because no, there are aspects of Fabric that aren't ready yet. But it's, I think, important to always keep your, I'm going to screw up some analogy. Always keep focused on the features and things that are being supported, much in the same way that we talked about in episode 327, is Fabric ready yet? It depends on your business cases and what the business needs are, that you have current solutions and services that are running to support those. If Fabric, when Fabric offers better solutions or equivalent solutions, then yeah, you take a much closer look at it and say, hey, over time, like, this is the direction we want to go. It still supports all the business needs, still gives us a lot of flexibility, but, simplifies this whole experience for, the internal users or whatever use cases there are. And then more and more people move towards it. So for the biggest bang for your buck you're going to get with people using is my guess is all the net new stuff.
I'm going to highlight a word that you said, because I think it's a very relevant word that really, I don't want to say sums up, but is really integral to understanding Fabric right now. And I think it's comparison, where if you're trying to take your current workflows and processes that you're doing in Power BI and then just compare it exactly in Fabric, you're probably going to find yourself in some frustrations, because it's not a copy paste directly of Data Factory. It's not a direct copy paste of Dataflows or Git as we know it. It's getting there, but I don't think it's necessarily even intended to be. If you're trying to compare your current enterprise or deeply production-based workflows and say, okay, now we're just going to immediately move that to Fabric, you're probably going to find some things that's come to the surface that don't necessarily meet your requirements. However, I think, and I'll definitely lean on this as well, just because my main production workflows right now don't have the requirements or don't have those feature sets in Fabric that I would like, or to make them work, doesn't mean that I'm completely foregoing Fabric. If anything, I would say a lot of things I am testing out or trying to, in a sense, migrate into Fabric is a lot of my focus right now, because if it's not a direct copy paste or duplication of a process, there's a lot that it can solve for. I mean, just the lake houses alone right now have been huge. Again, Mike and I agree. I want to mention on the data flow side, it's so close. It's such a great user interface to push data in. But I agree, Mike. It's just, if I'm trying to directly copy and paste, it's not there yet. Maybe, or directly there yet for all my specifications. But man, 85%, 90% of what I can do in Fabric, and I can do very well.
Yeah, I think the thing to point out here again is we're talking about Fabric as it evolves. Like, this is Microsoft's direction for business intelligence across the board and all their data platform. So just because we have these frustrations or these current things that are like, still blocked, can't get there quite yet, right? Like, give it a month, give it 3 months, give it 6 months. Like, they're all in, right? So I think inevitably, so are we. We're along for the ride, right? We're just figuring out when is the best time to take the plunge, or integrate deeply with it to leverage all of the good stuff that it's offering as a platform already, right?
Okay, I agree with all these steps here, and while you guys were talking, I did do a quick deployment on a direct link enabled. Yeah, talk about nerdiest podcast ever. Here we go. I think I just did a test on it.
While you were discussing.
Why did Mike get quiet all of a sudden? Well, he was doing something on the side. All right, so
he was doing a deployment pipeline.
I had a lakehouse with a default semantic model, and I would agree the default semantic model doesn't go along for the ride. The lakehouse is the only thing you can deploy across different environments. So a default semantic model will not deploy across environments. However, if you create a semantic model based on that lakehouse, then you can deploy a direct lake enabled semantic model, just not the default one. So I am seeing my, direct lake enabled semantic model that moves through. But again, back to my earlier point, you don't get the data. So like if you're hydrating your lake with tables that are coming from a Dataflow Gen 2, you don't get that. Like, you can't do that stuff. Like, so you're not going to be able to load the lake. So to me, it's like totally pointless. If you use a Dataflow and you're hydrating your lake with some tables from some location and you don't have that Dataflow in the next pipeline, I had to go to the old workspace, export the the flow and then put it back in and then go back and repoint everything to the correct look. Like all this stuff is what it needs to be fixed inside the deployment pipelines. So at the end of the day, the feature does work again with a lot of these caveats. And I think maybe the complaint here, and particularly this question, is I don't know all the edge cases. Like
right.
This is the problem, right?
Workarounds.
We see it works, but like, oh, it works, but I don't have this little feature. I don't have this little thing. There's all these little like nitpicky things, and you're like, yeah, it works, but do it exactly like this, and then it will work. And so like I think that's what I'm also griping about here is like it should just work more universally across all the artifacts. And I think we're going to get there. I think the effort from Microsoft is pointing to we're going to fix it. It's going to get there. So I'm very positive about it. And honestly, I'm loving working in Fabric. It is very impactful for businesses. It does things a lot faster. I was just talking with another Microsoft CSP, and they're like, we're seeing companies do things in days and weeks that used to take months because we're not waiting to procure things, and things are just turning on, and we're able to move data around, and we're centralizing, and the idea that the workspaces are sharing things so much easier to across different teams and people, like spot on. Like so I really feel the excitement around Fabric, and I do think it's really making an impact for businesses. I think this just means we need to be a bit more patient. And again, I said this when it came out in November last year. I said you're going to need to give it some 6 months to a year for it to really start picking up some pace. And we are. It feels a lot like the very early days of Power BI when every month we got, tens, 20s, hundreds of updates every single month, all the things that are happening. So I'm very encouraged by that. It feels like we're heading in the right direction. All right. With that, we've definitely eaten up all your time today. Thank you very much, chat, for being very funny and interesting and having great comments. Thank you very much, chat. We really appreciate you. If you like this, please, and as Kratos BI would say, subscribe to the most nerdiest podcast you can. So we would love it if you would hit that subscribe button or the bell when we have new content. Also, if you like this and you felt this was a valuable conversation for other people to hear, please share it on social media or people at your business. We'd love to have other people kind of engaged in conversation. This is our fun community thing that we do every week. So we really appreciate it. We really thank you for participating and providing some wonderful feedback. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, like today, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. Finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of powerbi.tips social media channels.
And don't forget to check out jam.powerbi.tips for all your news feeds around great articles that Tommy will be adding. I'm
major updates.
Literally throwing you under the bus right now because now you have to do it because I'm saying on the podcast. It's now official. It's in the world. You have to do it. You have to make sure that it works.
Get ready to get over your jam to get jammed out.
Jammed full.
Jammed full of new articles or whatever. Great ending, guys. Great ending. Way to go. Awesome. We're so good at this. Awesome. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.